In the last video, we set up a layout for a learning chemistry game where we can put elements into molecules and then save them. And then later we can randomly pick from that list and we can guess molecules. Now the trick is we have, for example, here 3 oxygens. Ooh, looks like I didn't rename one. And then we have also carbon, nitrogen, and hydrogen. And even though we have, say, carbon 1, carbon 2, they're both carbon. We need a good way to identify them. I need to change my naming convention just a little bit to add a delimiter. So a delimiter is something that separates 2 different fields. So for this oxygen ball that I created in the last video, I'm going to name it oxygen_2. And that little underscore is a delimiter. I'm going to go ahead and add this to each of these. Now I don't want to bore you with it, so I'm going to pause the video for a moment as I complete this task. And now with the magic of video, you'll see that's all complete. And you'll see how that's important in just a moment, because we don't want to differentiate within a family of elements. In other words, carbon 1, carbon 2, we don't care which one the user dragged into the ImageSprite here. This ImageSprite, let's see, we haven't given it a name yet. Let's just call it molecule box. Okay, now we can start to do some design work or some actual programming work. I'm going to go to the blocks view. And what I'm going to do is this is going to get pretty busy in just a moment. So what I need to do is I need to take, say, carbon 1, or actually let's grab, we already have an event on carbon 1, so let's see, we already have these event handlers and we don't want to duplicate them. So I'll take a new one. We'll grab, we'll grab carbon 2, and I'm going to get a collided with event. Okay, so collided with, we can use it just like we did our other collided with events. I want to put an if test in there. So what I might do, I might just copy this one we did for oxygen 3. So copy and modify a little bit. Let me see if I can give us some more room here. Actually, I'll just drag it down a little bit. Just a moment. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to simplify this. I don't need the whole OR test in here. I just need one of these comparisons. Whoops. Well, I actually don't really need that one either. Hang on just a moment. I'm going to do some housekeeping here, and then I'll explain what I'm doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in an if test, because the event is just it collided with something. We need to know what it collided with. And so I'm going to grab the molecule box, and I'm going to grab the little tag that describes the molecule box, just like so. Okay. So if carbon 2 collided with a molecule box, then we're going to show a notice, we're going to say molecule. Now more to go here. We have a lot more to go on this, but we just want to test out the concept first. So that's carbon 2. We also need to add a dragged event for carbon 2, just like we did for the other ones. That'll be pretty fast though. So carbon 2. And I'm going to say, okay, dragged. And then I'll just borrow one of these blocks that we have here to make it easier. That means when I click and drag it, it's actually going to go somewhere, not just stay stationary. So carbon 2 move to, okay, there we go. So when we click and drag it, it's going to move to wherever we clicked and dragged it. That gives us the capability then to have it collide with a molecule box, and then we can confirm that it's collided with a molecule box because we're going to see this notice that says molecule. Okay. So let me scroll up just a moment. Let's make sure I remember which one carbon 2 is. So that's carbon 1, that's carbon 2. So carbon 2 is the one that's a bit closer. Okay, I'll save, and then we'll take a look at this in the emulator. Okay, so here's my carbon 2. And notice when I drag it, we get that molecule pop up. So that looks good. One thing I don't like, though, is that it hides behind this box. So we kind of want to take a look at that as well. But nonetheless, we have our proof of concept now that we can drag molecules and then basically register them with this box. Okay. Now an easy way to fix this is to change this Z right here. I bet you didn't know what the Z means. Maybe the X and the Y, but Z is a bit mysterious. Change it from 1 to 0.5, give it a lower priority. And now let's see what happens when the screen refreshes and when we drag our ball over to our ImageSprite. Okay, so now I grab carbon 2, drag it over. And notice that now you see carbon 2 on top of the image box, and also this little molecule notification came up. So with that, we can go back and now we can get a bit more complex with this event. Instead of just showing an alert, we can actually add this to a list. So let's see, we are at carbon 2. And instead of, we can keep the show alert, that's fine. But we also want to add this to our list. So I'm going to make a global list. We'll say initialize global molecules 2, and then we'll just go to list and we'll say create empty list. So because that's global, that means any of our event handlers can see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to variables, or actually we'll go to lists, and I will say add item to list. Okay, what's the list? It's going to be this thing called global molecules. What's the item? Well, the item is simply going to be carbon. And so I'm just going to grab a text literal here, just a moment. There we go. And we're going to add carbon to our list. We could do the letter C, or we could spell it out. We'll just go ahead and do carbon. Okay. Now, the trick is I need to do this with each of my molecules. And let's see. Do I have one for carbon 3? I don't. The good news is this will be a bit of work. Oh, I don't have a carbon 3. That's the problem. This will be a bit of work, but it will be easy to copy and paste. So, for example, if I grab hydrogen 1, I can do a collided with here. I can just drag this event over. And then I'm going to copy this entire block and paste. And then instead of carbon, I'm going to say hydrogen. Okay, there we go. Hydrogen 2, I can do the same thing. This one will be even easier. So when hydrogen 2 collided with, and once again, I'm trying to get, bear with me here, I'm trying to get as much of this on the screen as I can. We will copy this exact same block. We don't care if it's hydrogen 1 or 2. Both of them are going to result in hydrogen added to our list. So also, I'm going to change the notice from molecule to hydrogen added here. And again, hydrogen added. Okay. And once again, carbon added. So that's easy enough. Now we already have a handler for some of our elements. So for example, oxygen 3 and carbon 1. What we can do here is we can just expand on those. Let me drag this guy out of the way. We can expand on those. So right now we already have an event for oxygen colliding with another oxygen. It produces atmospheric oxygen. I also want to make an event for oxygen colliding with the little image sprite that we made. So I'm going to drag this else if into the else, and watch what happens is it gives me this else if option here. So here I'm just adding on to an existing event that I made in a previous video. So first of all, let's grab the test, and I'll Control V and paste that. Okay, is the other item that we've collided into, is it a molecule box? Scroll up and plug that in. Okay, and scroll back down and grab the body of the test, and we're going to say, okay, grab these two. It looks like it's only going to let me get one at a time, so paste, and then we'll drag that guy up just a moment. Okay, and we need to do the add to list operation. Okay, and up a little bit, and Control V. Okay, gets a little tricky when we start to get a whole bunch of things on here. So we need to do this. Okay, there we go. So you see, if it's oxygen, if we collide with another oxygen, we just say atmospheric oxygen. If we collide with a molecule box, then we're going to say oxygen added. Let me fix that. Oops. I will warn you, by the way, we don't want to over notify. We don't want to show too many notifications. So I wouldn't probably show this many alerts in a normal application in Oxygen. I need to do this for each of our balls, each of our image sprites over here in the canvas. But I don't want to bore you with it, so I'm going to pause the video at the moment, and I'm going to complete the rest of these events. Just a moment. Now, I didn't get to every one of them, but I did do Oxygen 3, which is this one, Carbon 1, Carbon 2, and I also did hydrogen 1 and hydrogen 2. That will give us a lot of combinations: carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen peroxide, water, things like that. So let's just make sure that it works as we expect. We'll give it a moment here to refresh. So now it's loaded. Let's test things out. I'm going to drag the oxygen up, and we get our oxygen added. We see the ball right there. Grab the hydrogen, hydrogen added, hydrogen again, and might have to play around a little bit because I think I have one covering another here, but nonetheless, right now I have H2O. Okay, let's grab our carbon, make sure he can go in there. Carbon's added. Okay, one more carbon. And there we go, carbon added again. So we see that we're able to have the balls interact with the ImageSprite, and we are able to add those to a list. In our next video, we're going to persist that list to a TinyDB database. We'll see you then.